The cold rain was relentless the night my husband handed me a heavy plastic trash bag instead of an umbrella. After 2 decades of marriage, Vance stood in the doorway of our home looking at me like an unwanted houseguest. His mother's grave was barely covered. "I only needed you to take care of my mom," he muttered calmly. That brutal moment was the result of a slow, silent erosion that had been happening for 3 long years. My name is Julia. Before my life stalled, I was a dedicated 3rd-grade teacher at Oak Ridge Elementary. I loved the chaotic energy of my classroom, the scent of fresh crayons, and the bright faces of my students. I walked away from all of it when Eleanor, my mother-in-law, was diagnosed with aggressive dementia. Vance insisted she needed family, promising we would hire professional help soon. That promised help never arrived. I became her round-the-clock nurse, learning her physical therapy routines, her favorite oldies, and how to soothe her during her worst, most terrifying hallucinations. While I spent sleepless nights caring for Eleanor, Vance focused entirely on his corporate climb. He was a sales director who measured his self-worth by heavy watches and expensive dinners. Our neighbors praised him as a saint for keeping his mother at home. They had no idea I was the one sacrificing my entire existence to make it happen. I never truly resented Eleanor. She was incredibly sweet, even as her mind drifted away. What ate at me was Vance's freezing indifference. He stopped asking how I was doing, treating me like a ghost in my own house. I began to realize our marriage had withered into nothing more than a convenient business arrangement. About 3 weeks before Eleanor passed, she had a rare, beautifully clear morning where her mind returned completely. I was reading her favorite novel when she suddenly reached out and squeezed my hand with surprising strength. "Julia, promise me something," she whispered, her eyes sharp. "Never let my son define your worth in this world." I smiled gently, assuming it was just a fleeting moment of confusion, but she stared intensely, ensuring I understood. I didn't realize she had already spent months working with a brilliant attorney named Arlene Sterling. Together, they had quietly rewritten her entire estate plan to protect me from the storm she knew was coming. During those final weeks, Vance became a complete stranger, constantly hiding his phone and taking secretive calls. I frequently saw the name Tanya flashing on his screen. I suspected he was having an affair, but I was simply too exhausted to fight him. I poured all my remaining energy into keeping Eleanor comfortable and loved. Eleanor passed away peacefully on a quiet gray Tuesday morning while holding my hand. When Vance finally arrived nearly an hour later, he didn't shed a single tear. He looked at his mother's body with a cold expression of mild inconvenience. It was like he was relieved a difficult scheduling conflict had finally been resolved. The funeral was brief and incredibly formal, with Vance delivering a perfectly rehearsed empty speech. Only after the last guest departed did my phone ring from an unknown number. It was Arlene Sterling, Eleanor's attorney. She told me she had strict instructions to wait exactly 7 days before sharing some crucial, life-changing information with me. I kept that mysterious phone call to myself, waiting quietly as the week slowly passed. On the 7th day, I tentatively told Vance over dinner that I wanted to return to teaching. He set his fork down and laughed condescendingly. He told me the world had moved on and I was completely useless in a modern classroom. Then the remaining warmth completely vanished from his face. "I only kept you around to nurse my mother," he said with chilling detachment. He admitted he had only stayed married to avoid paying for professional care. Now that she was gone, he wanted a divorce, throwing a spare key on the table and opening the front door. I didn't argue or shed a single tear as I packed one small bag and walked out. I trudged through the downpour to a cheap motel down the street, feeling a bizarre sense of relief. As I sat on the faded bed, my phone lit up with Arlene's name. I ignored it, needing just one night of absolute silence. Meanwhile, Vance poured himself a drink and immediately called Tanya to celebrate his newfound freedom. He boasted that the house was finally his, and his useless wife was gone forever. He believed he had won everything, entirely unaware of the trap his mother had set for him. His celebration was destined to be incredibly short-lived. Later that evening, Vance drove into the driveway, only to find 2 black SUVs blocking his path. He stepped out of his car, thoroughly annoyed, demanding to know who was trespassing on his property. Arlene Sterling stepped forward, holding a sleek leather folder, her expression entirely calm and completely professional. Vance confidently claimed the home was his, citing an old version of his mother's will. Arlene politely corrected him, explaining that Eleanor had established a secret living trust 2 years prior. Under its strict legal terms, ownership of the property transferred entirely to Eleanor's primary caregiver. That meant the house belonged solely to me. Vance screamed that he would contest it, but Arlene calmly explained that the trust was legally bulletproof. She handed him a formal legal notice giving him exactly 48 hours to pack his things and leave. Hearing about his spectacular downfall later didn't bring me joy. It just made me appreciate Eleanor's protective love. I returned to the house the following morning to find Vance surrounded by half-filled boxes. He glared at me, accusing me of scheming with his mother behind his back. I looked at him steadily, feeling absolutely no fear. "No, Vance," I replied quietly. "Your mother did this all on her own." Moving back into the empty house was a deeply emotional and haunting experience. Every room still whispered of Eleanor, from the scent of her favorite tea to the scuff marks from her walker. I gave myself time to grieve before calling Oak Ridge Elementary. My old principal, Gloria, welcomed me back to the 3rd grade with open arms. Stepping back into my classroom felt like waking up from a long, suffocating nightmare. It was during that transitional fall semester that I met a kind widower named Garrett Myers. His sweet daughter, Lily, was one of my brightest students. Garrett always showed up to parent-teacher conferences with genuine warmth and respect. Our connection grew slowly, built on mutual understanding and quiet acts of kindness. Garrett would randomly show up to fix my broken fence or replace a difficult porch light. When I caught a terrible winter cold, he left homemade soup on my porch. It was the first time in decades someone cared for me without expecting anything back. Meanwhile, Vance was forced to rent a dreary beige apartment on the edge of town. Once Tanya realized the massive family house and inheritance were gone, she lost all interest in him. She stopped returning his calls and quickly transferred to another branch. Vance was left completely alone with his pride and his mounting regrets. Nearly 5 months after that rainy eviction night, my phone rang with Vance's number. I agreed to meet him at a quiet local diner, mostly out of curiosity. He looked exhausted, graying, and completely defeated. He offered a rushed, desperate apology, blaming his cruel behavior on the immense stress of his mother's illness. I listened silently as he begged for a second chance to prove he had changed. Looking at him, I realized he never truly loved me. He only loved having a convenient wife. "I spent 20 years proving my love to you," I told him, standing up. "I won't spend another 20 trying to prove my worth." I walked out to the parking lot where Garrett was patiently waiting to take me to a movie. He didn't ask what happened. He just smiled and opened the car door. 3 days later, Arlene Sterling called to deliver a sealed envelope Eleanor had left for me, containing a private letter written in shaky handwriting. I sat at the kitchen table and read her words through a blur of tears. Eleanor wrote that she had witnessed my silent pain and wanted to ensure I was protected. "You stopped being my daughter-in-law the day you became my daughter," she wrote. It was the most beautiful, healing validation I had ever received. My life with Garrett and Lily flourished into something incredibly peaceful and full of laughter. A year later, Garrett proposed in my backyard garden while we were cleaning up after dinner. He knelt down with a modest, beautiful ring that had once belonged to his late wife, a gesture suggested by sweet Lily herself. I happily said yes, finally stepping into a future built on genuine, unconditional love. I only saw Vance once more, when he slowly drove past my house on a sunny Saturday afternoon. He watched us laughing in the garden from his car window, then silently drove away, realizing exactly what he had thrown away. Eleanor's final lesson will stay with me forever. Love is never about endless, unappreciated sacrifice. True love is being cherished while you are still there, not apologized to once you are gone. I would love to know what this story means to you and where you are watching from tonight. Please comment below and subscribe.